Eric Durak, you've been in this industry, the fitness industry, longer than I have, I think. You wrote the first cancer exercise protocol that I'm aware of, and you even wrote, I believe, the very first book on exercise, the industry exercise, getting reimbursement in the fitness industry. But you told me something recently that just shocked me. I had never heard of this, and I really think I try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on. You told me about what some may believe to be an unholy alliance between the gym industry and Ozempic and Big Pharma. I had never heard this before, and I looked into it, and you were absolutely correct. So for those who are listening to us on the podcast or watching us on YouTube or elsewhere right now, Ozempic may be coming to a gym near you in the near future.
Ozempic will be coming to a gym near you. So about two months ago, my business coach, Bob Asquari, sent me an article that Lifetime Health and Fitness, which is out of Minnesota, has formed a relationship with a longevity company called Miura. And Miura is out of Orange County, California, and they set up shop inside the flagship Lifetime Center in, I think it's in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And they are going to start their, quote, longevity project. But the longevity project is really going to have its main actor be Ozempic. So they're going to have people coming in for weight loss programs, and they're going to try to change their lifestyle, which, I mean, I agree with. I think it's, how you get them in the door is one thing. You can give them a 2-for-1. You can give them a discount on membership. You can give them all kinds of incentives. And the bottom line here, Joe, is that people are going to be taking Ozempic anyway because Oprah says so, and Dr. Drew says so, and all these other people say that this is sort of the up-and-coming thing. And so as people look for the next Fen-Phen or the next Olestra or the next whatever, this seems to be what's happening. So it's not just Lifetime. About 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I attended the American College of Sports Medicine's Health and Fitness Conference in Chicago, Illinois. And their keynote speech was on the pharmaceutical industry and that it's coming to a club near you. I mean, they literally almost mirrored exactly what you said. And their mantra was to the 600 people in the audience, it's coming. You better be ready. And they were basically touting the benefits of the drug from the weight loss standpoint and the behavioral standpoint. They painted a very rosy picture because this is what they do for a living. One of them is an obesity physician, one of them is an obesity PhD researcher, and one of them was a PhD behavioral counseling psychologist who works in the weight loss industry. So their take on it is, it seems to work really well. You're losing weight at a really good clip, but you're not losing 3 pounds a day. You're losing, 3 to 4 pounds a week, which is maybe a half a pound or so a day. So physiologically, it's not like it's not stripping it away too fast, but it also depends on the dosage that you're doing. Most people are starting at about 0.5 milligrams of Ozempic. And I'm going to use Ozempic. By the way, there's 14 of these drugs that are on the market right now. And there's semi-glutides or other types of glutides. There's 3 different types of glutides. And then there's two medications that are not in the, quote, glutide family. Whatever that is. I mean, I'm still trying to figure this stuff out myself. But they are starting at a dosage, and depending on their obesity status, weight, they're trying to metabolically scale this up to 2.5 milligrams, which is a once-a-week injectable. Some people are only injecting once a month, but most people are injecting once a week. And it's a self-injection. It's like a diabetes injection. So,
once a week, and again, this drug is still going to cost you about $1,000 a month, which is
$250 a shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
So
you
it's
you you made a distinction a minute ago that I kind of giggled at. I shouldn't have, but you said it's the newest something of is newest iteration of fen-phen. I don't think they want to be associated with the fen-phen reputation, but you're right.
or the
They
olestra, because olestra essentially cause what do they call it? Anal leakage.
anal
I'm
leakage
I'm sorry, back where I come from in mid Michigan, it's called crap in your pants.
and
And
and fen-phen was associated with several deaths. It was fenfluramine and phentermine combination,
right,
and I remember, I think it was in the 90s or early 2000s, no, definitely in the 90s, they rolled out the red carpet for
yeah,
fen-phen. And there was very little research that those two drugs worked synergistically safely.
right.
And now we know fenfluramine was the problem, was the drug causing the heart defects. And unfortunately, several people died from this. And I don't think the same thing is going to happen with Ozempic, but it was
But
interesting
we
you
don't.
made
But here's the thing: is Joe? We really don't know, because here's one of the questions that I sent to you that I wanted to discuss, which probably now is a good time. Is, what is the physiologic mechanism? What is the pathology here? Whatever. And fen-phen acts in a couple. Or I'm sorry, but fen-phen here. I'm sorry, Freudian slip. Ozempic, what I'll call GLP-1s. I'm going to call this class of drugs the GLP-1 agonists. And the agonist means that it's antagonizing to normal gut physiologic processes, and the big one is peristalsis. So I'm going to start this section by saying that Novo Nordisk, which is the company that produces Ozempic, is already in a class action lawsuit for what's called gastric paralysis. And essentially, when you stop peristalsis in the stomach, the duodenum, small intestines, etc., and you don't get the motility of the food that runs through the system, number one, it can't absorb the nutrients because it's not moving anywhere. Number two, that food is rotting now in the stomach, duodenum, and the small intestines, as opposed to moving through the system. So all of the residues, the poisons, the pesticides, etc., which may be on that food, which should normally get out of the system, is now stagnating in there at longer time frames.
Right.
So just from that standpoint, from peristalsis, but what else does peristalsis do? It helps with the gut biome. Your gut biome is helped create it. It's like churning soup. Anytime that you're in the kitchen with your mother, your grandmother, your wife, or your daughter, or your son who's making something, it all has to be mixed. You don't make a cake by putting a bunch of flour and stuff in there and just watching it sit. You have to mix it. It goes through a process. So you have the lack of peristalsis, you have problems with the gut biome, and in my opinion, you're also having problems with the gut immune system, which is where 70 or 80% of your immune cells are created. And if they're in this stagnant pool of rotting food, I would imagine that you're having even more problems with the immune system, because we know the COVID shots actually reduce the ability of your innate immune system to work better anyway. So we're just seeing more and more issues with this. Is it going to be like other types of drugs where they try to hide, and that's the train going by. We may want to edit that out. But anyway, these other types of drugs where they hid the fact that there were deaths in some of the clinical trials, like the hypertensive drug that they sold, or the cholesterol drug. And I don't know what we're going to see with Ozempic and these GLP-1s, but my instinct tells me that, number one, if people are going to be on this drug for the rest of their life, which is what some of the pharmaceutical groups say, that's going to be problematic. So my issue here with the health clubs, who may be having Ozempic patients or GLP-1 patients come into their clubs and inviting them with open arms, the goal for the industry, which I've actually heard Pete Moore, who's an industry insider, was talking about Ozempic, and I've heard someone else talk about it. And Lifetime says that we want these people to have and they're using a play on words. They want to have a lifetime membership. They want them to come in and be regular members of this club for a long time, because that's really how they're going to change their mindset. because otherwise, according to the step 1 through 5 trials that were done on GLP-1s, they had their first group of people on this drug for a year, and they lost X amount of weight.
Right.
And then at the end of the year, they just cut them loose and said, go back to your regular lifestyle. And guess what? They gained almost all of that weight back again.
Right.
So if you can get them on a program for 2 or 3 or 4 months where they're on a GLP-1 agonist, and you can completely change their lifestyle, introduce them to strength training, introduce them to posture, introduce them to Pilates and breathing and nutrition and group exercise and stuff, something that they might not have had any interaction with in their adult life, you may actually convert, a goodly percentage of people to become regular health club memberships. And I had a conversation this morning, and I had said that last week I read an industry report where the health club industry is up 7% in 2023.
Wow.
And this is post-COVID.
Yeah.
So they had to start from essentially nothing in 2021, and then 2 years later, they're actually showing some of these clubs have had their best year ever in 2023, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
So it shows me that people do want to be in health clubs. There's something about being in a health club, and I mean, I go to a health club every day. It's just part of my routine. I've got people that I like there. I have coffee with them. I like the owner. He's been a friend. Nice. It's just, it's like I always tell people that my gym is like Cheers. I walk in and everyone says, Norm.
Yes.
What's going down, Mr. Durak? So anyway.
No, it's a good analogy. And, we came to this, almost 3-year science fiction movie where they told us not to go out. And we're still dealing, I think, with the ramifications of people isolating themselves. I think gyms really do satisfy a need. You get out with people, and even for me as well. I mean, when we're done our podcast today, I'm going to the gym myself, and it's good to get out with people, even if I'm not even talking to them all, because nobody says Joe when I walk in. At least I'm.
They don't say that to me either, but it's. But I'm just saying that I do know the workers. I do know the owner. I get a chance to sit behind the desk and talk to people, and I'm getting to know more and more people. And in fact, my club has 2 locations. One is out here in Goleta, California, and then there's one in Uptown Santa Barbara. And the Uptown one actually has a morning group of 60 plus people, about 10 or 12 or 15 people who are over 60 that come in for their almost daily morning workout. And I think it's pretty cool because they're the ones who need it. They're the one, and they're all in reasonably good shape. There's, I don't see anyone at 350 pounds, but I'm just really sort of heartfelt that group is, and it's not a Silver Sneakers group or anything like that. They just come in and do their workouts, which is fantastic. So yes, I'm very happy that the health club industry is moving forward. And to be honest with you, Joe, I think that there is going to be an upside about the GLP-1 membership push.
Okay.
Because most of the time, people in health clubs will get the referral from the doctor and they'll listen to everything the doctor has to say. But in this case, most doctors have no idea what the long-term ramifications of being on this medication will be.
Right. It's an experiment.
It's an experiment, just like COVID was an experiment. And by the way, how did that turn out? Not very good. So I'm looking at this from my experience 30 years ago doing diabetes research and learning from some of the best diabetologists in the country. And now sort of really trying to wrap my head around where this whole GLP issue is that, number one, get them in the door. Number two, figure out what their metabolic status is. How much medication are they taking? Are there any other meds that they're on? What's their exercise history? We'll go through that thing. What are their blood labs? And then the goal is to get them off that medication. If it's 1 milligram, you can scale back in just a couple months to 0. And then the goal is to say, okay, how can we utilize exercise, strength training, and nutrition, to maintain or even slightly increase that lean tissue while keeping the percent body fat off. And health clubs, Joe, have always had an advantage over doctors, because when I started working in clinical, cardiology, diabetes care, whatever, with doctors, they just had people stand on the scale. Oh, you lost 4 pounds this week or whatever. And I'm like, but wait a minute, why don't you have them do a body composition? Why can't you have them hold a BIA unit where they can get their body water, their lean body mass, and their body fat?
Right.
And now we have companies like InBody that do this almost to perfection.
Right.
And so we can get this data on people on a regular basis, which is above and beyond their doctor's, waist to hip ratio, and really make an impact. Because one of the things that I see about GLPs is part of the mechanism of what they do is they're dehydrating the body. Whenever you lose lean tissue, you're losing water. Right. And so this is not as much a body fat. I've always said this to people. It's not as much a body fat issue as it is a body hydration issue. And if health clubs can help people to maintain a certain level of hydration through knowing, through body composition, we're in a much better place.
This is going to be an interesting experiment, and as I said, unholy alliance in the beginning. Maybe it may not be an unholy alliance, because if we can get data on millions of people taking Ozempic and similar glucagon-like one peptide users, and data on exercise, that in theory could push the needle forward as far as science is concerned on this, because again, as you pointed out, we don't know the long-term effects of using this drug. Right. You mentioned, again, there are some side effects. One of the ones that jumped out at me is there was a report, I think it was a guy in Canada last year going through surgery. He begins to aspirate during surgery, because normally they want you to get off all your food like 12 hours before surgery. But as you rightly pointed out, these Ozempic and other GLP-1 agonists, they slow down peristalsis. They basically stop your stomach from emptying. So people going through surgery may need longer times of getting off food before they go through surgery, so they prevent some aspiration. So that's just some stuff, that gastroparesis is what they call it. That's what's coming up in some of the literature. But this is going to be an interesting experiment if they can get the data on exercise. Most gyms, at least the ones that I've been to, they're not really tracking the exercise component too much. I mean, you go in, you do your thing, you leave, you're not scanning a card or anything. So what I think I would love to see for the gym industry to do is, if people are using these medications, you give them some kind of a card, and there's a reader on the different equipment if they're using machines, can't do it with free weights, and all that stuff could get tracked. And then the other component, which you would probably know more about this, I know you would know about this more than I would be, can you get insurance reimbursement on your gym membership if you're doing Ozempic?
Let's talk about the data first, because that's sort of near and dear to my heart, and that's really what I'm doing for a living right now. A couple months ago, I just published a study on body composition with a health club chain worldwide with their Los Angeles group. We just published that in the Journal of Obesity and Weight Management. And I want to start submitting a series of reports to this journal, because I think it really speaks to this. So the data, Technogym, which is the largest equipment and tech company in the world, they have the ability to interface with Apple Watch and iPhone and all the other things. So if you have something like Strava or Map My Walk or something where you're on the trail, all that data can get downloaded.
Perfect.
And also I work with a company in Virginia called Weld Health, and Weld Health has an interface where they can work with an Apple Watch or other computer systems. So if you log in something on your phone, it can actually interface with Weld Health. And then, of course, my Healthy Stats software program, which is something that I would like to, kind of utilize. I'm actually wireframing a page right now on Ozempic, because I already have a weight loss wireframe for the software, but I want it specific to Ozempic. How much are you on? How much are you scaling back, et cetera. So from the data standpoint, we're kind of there, but not really. So we have to say to each health club, if you want to start working with Ozempic patients, number one, you have to have a certification, which I'm working on. Number two, you have to understand a little bit about this medication because it will affect the way that people lift weights. It's like I always said with diabetes. Diabetes, exercise is blood sugar dependent. If you're a diabetic and you walk into a gym and your pre-exercise blood sugar is 82, you probably shouldn't be running full speed on the treadmill for an hour or lifting as heavy weights. Right. You may want to have some food, and then you may want to do that day more of a moderate to low exercise intensity. If your blood sugar is at 193, you're good to go. You could do an hour balls to the wall and you're going to be fine. You'll test your blood sugar. And it's the same thing that I see with Ozempic is that they're going to come in partially dehydrated, maybe low in energy because, again, they're not getting the nutrients to absorb into the body because they're on this drug. And this is where I see that exercise can be problematic. And as part of this, and I'll get to the insurance here in a second, there's a liability factor here too, Joe. You know this because in my certification manual, the first chapter that I finished was on legal issues and liability. I just finished it a couple days ago. Right. And I went to the New York Sports Club case in 2000 where the person who was on the hypertension medication took the ephedra supplement, had the heart attack or stroke that night, died, and the family didn't sue the doctors. They sued New York Sports Club and the trainer. They settled out of court for $3.2 million. Right. So my thing is that there is a liability issue here for the clubs. They really need to understand to get their data,
we were thinking along the same lines. I'm well aware with that. I tell personal trainers about that study all the time, or that report. Horrible, the worst case scenario. Again, whether or not that, and I don't know anything about that personal trainer. Was he equipped to know about hypertension, which the person didn't have hypertension? When somebody, but you bring up a really good topic because someone may be taking Ozempic, they join a gym that has one of these clinics. They're going to walk in not just with diabetes, they're going to walk in with a bunch of other comorbidities. There are heart disease, there could be diabetes, there could be hypertension, there could be a whole variety of different issues. Are personal trainers generally equipped to deal with that? Some better than others. I do know, for instance, when I was researching for this, I noticed that you met Equinox, which is a very popular gym. They now have the I believe they call it the GLP-1 Protocol, where trainers will take people through a workout when they're on these medications. Again, I don't know anything about the GLP-1 protocol they're using, but
I bet you they don't either.
I hope so.
Because my thing is, what is it? I mean, is it a high intensity strength training? What's the work to rest ratio? What percentage of a perceived 1RM do you use on a regular basis? Right. Do you have high intensity, moderate intensity, low? I mean, there's 50 factors here. You know what I mean?
Correct. And if we're only targeting the diabetes, we may not be targeting the hypertension. Like high intensity exercise, probably not something I would give somebody who had hypertension. So sometimes there's have to be a balancing act, and personal trainers, I think, who are going to be working with people who are on Ozempic may need a higher end, or I don't want to say higher end certification, but a high
level trainer. Yeah.
Yeah. They want a broader spectrum of knowledge more than lifting weights, because
someone who's probably working maybe in a medical fitness center, someone who's had some experience. Like one of the first things that I worked diabetes and cancer, but I also worked in cardiology. And so, that sort of covered a wide spectrum of my metabolic stuff. But again, when I started working with cancer patients, there was no data, Joe, on exercise except from a woman named Meryl Winningham, and that was just putting people on a bicycle. And so when I was doing strength training protocols, my thing was, start slow, make sure that you're not ruffling the feathers here, and then gradually progress. They should use the same mindset in Ozempic, but according to my doctor in Los Angeles, he's been working with some Ozempic patients for over a year, and he essentially says they can't increase muscle mass. The GLP pretty much strips the lean tissue faster than the strength training 3 days a week can put it on. So that's going to be another thing. And this is something, I'll get to the insurance in a second, but all this stream of consciousness that I'm saying, you're the nutrition guy. If you were to put together a GLP-1 exercise protocol, why couldn't you have the nutrition component be something like this phylesterine or whatever, or creatine monohydrate, which will actually help with muscle hypertrophy. So there's a number of different things that you can go down in terms of trying to keep this muscle mass and hydration. I mean, my thing is you got to have some sort of electrolyte supplement here as well too, because if you're not digesting your food, the electrolytes aren't getting in, and henceforth when you're doing your repetitions with, let's say, 60% of your best effort, you just don't have the ions going back and forth with those contractions at a much higher level, much more ATP, much more energy production. Where's that energy coming from?
Yeah, this muscle too.
Exactly. Oh man, don't even. That's a whole nother discussion about cardiac events, because again, the dehydration, because the the pericardial sac is all fluid, and it's just like, oh my gosh. So it's like you and I know enough to know how dangerous this can be. And my question is, do the doctors not think about this when they, I don't know.
I don't know either. It's funny, going back to what you said earlier about the Apple Watch. I'm still in the 20th century. I was saying swipe a card, but you're absolutely right. We have a lot of wearables that we could be pulling data from all the time. So I like that aspect of it. Again, the liability issue concerns me a little bit, because when you join a gym, again, things have changed since I worked in a gym. Where I used to work many years ago was a hospital fitness center. Everybody got a multi-page document. I actually required people to get a doctor's permission before they could take the exercise programs I oversaw. Now when you go walk into a gym, they have you sign a waiver, and that's it. You're on your own. They don't care. There's not even a PAR Q being issued. And this is my own soapbox for a minute. Gyms aren't even issuing a PAR Q, a physical activity readiness questionnaire for people joining a gym. The last time I joined a gym, again, several years ago, I remember, this is a true story. I'm sitting there with the salesman. All they care about is sign that waiver. And I remember saying to the guy, looking around, and I said to this guy, what do you do if, God forbid, somebody has a heart attack in this joint? And he looks at me and says, well, sir, he says, we're all AED and CPR certified, to which I then said to him, oh, that's great. By the way, where is your AED? He did not know. I had to point it out for him, because I'm weird like that. I always look at AEDs when I walk into a joint, AEDs and fire extinguishers. So he didn't even know, which makes me wonder, again, another soapbox. I think gyms are woefully ill prepared for medical emergencies. Yeah. I've heard horror stories from personal trainers over the years of what happens in some gyms. So if we're bringing in a population of people who may have multiple issues, diabetes and heart disease, etc., is the gym world prepared to step up to doing what needs to be done for this population to keep them the safest? It isn't just about, hey, get this prescription and take this drug and you're going to be exercising. And again, you mentioned, the strength training, which we don't even know if strength training can maintain muscle on Ozempic.
Well, based on my group from Los Angeles, it cannot.
Wow.
But again, they're a beta site, and they may be exercising more caution because the owner of this club is a doctor. So he may be saying, okay, well, let's do a moderate program and let's kind of see where we're at with this group. Luckily for me, I'm actually getting that data in a couple weeks. Good. And I want to spend some time in April getting a paper ready about what the lean body, because they have an in-body there. They have an in-body composition machine. So I really think that there's going to be, and they do blood work there too.
Right.
So
and a lot of the studies that I looked at talked about lean mass. You mentioned it yourself. And as you rightly pointed out, water is lean mass. So are we looking at the loss of water and calling it loss of muscle mass, or are we actually documenting a loss of muscle mass? That I think is another question we don't know the answer to. Again, bioelectric impedance, even the in-body, which apparently is very accurate. Is that going to be enough data? Or are we looking at something like a bod pod, or maybe even I'm usually dead set again DEXA scans for these people.
DEXA scan, I probably would not
Yeah.
think. There's actually a new device that's coming out. It's on the market right now. It's out of Wisconsin. It's called a Halo Plus or something, and
Okay.
it's for osteoporosis. But it has the ability to look at lean body mass.
Sound
Uh,
waves?
huh? It's a
Sound
sound
wave?
wave. It's a sound wave. It's an ultrasound.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's this like top of the line stuff that's out. I should have written it down beforehand, but of course there's 100 things that we could talk about. But
Yeah.
but I think that in body is going to be good enough.
Okay.
You know, because like I say, what do doctors do? They put them on a scale and they do a BMI, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's not going to cut it. And over time,
Right.
if you do a weekly body composition or a bi-weekly body composition on someone who's in a 2-month program, you get 1, 2, 3. You get 4 or 5 different body composition measures, so you can follow the trends from an analysis
Right.
of variance. So I do think that from that data, blood work is going to be massively important. And again, people say, well, health clubs can't do blood labs. Well, yes, they can. They can do it through a website called Request a Test, which I have on my website. And Request a Test, you, Joe Cannon, can log on. You can put your information and your doctor's information in. You can go to the nearest Quest Diagnostics or LabCorp blood draw station right down from your house. You can get the blood draw. It's already paid for. You know, you give them your paperwork or they scan your QR code and you're good to go. And most of these things are only like $120 for a lipid panel, and you can get that paperwork and send it to your insurance company, and you'll probably get reimbursement on that as well. So we're getting to the reimbursement here. We're chipping away at that, but
The thing that comes to my mind is if we're going to ask people to do all this, because we're talking about essentially a Manhattan Project type thing with a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, blood tests, exercise, doctors involved, prescriptions,
body
personal
comp, you're right,
body
exactly.
comp. Has Big Pharma, and let's take Novo Nordisk, since they're the big player in this game, is there any talk of saying, hey, Novo Nordisk, we're going to bring this drug into the gym world, and it's going to help a lot of people, but there's a lot we don't know yet. Will you give a discount, or I'll just say it, free Ozempic to people who are willing to do all of this for the sake of the data, for the sake of moving the needle forward to find out what effect Ozempic and exercise played? Are they synergistic, and can they make a long-term improvement in people's health? Is there anybody talking about that?
Well, okay, they're not going to do that because their shareholders are going to say, that Joe Cannon, what does he know? But now I'm going to lead into the reimbursement issue. And one of the gentlemen that was on the phone with me an hour ago is a gentleman named Jason Paul from LifeCore Group in Phoenix, Arizona. And Jason has a 2-phase insurance program. Phase 1 is what's called My Insurance Aviator. And it's essentially a coaching program for health club members. Well, it's for anybody. It's for any insurance person to call this toll-free number to talk with an insurance coach about their plan and see if there's anything in their current insurance premium or their HSA dollars that will actually help pay for these GLP-1 exercise programs. What most people don't understand about HSA dollars, health savings accounts, is that they're pre-tax dollars, which means you and your employer get to decide what you're going to spend it on. Yeah. You can do it with chiropractic. You can use it with compression sleeves. You can do it with nutrition counseling, massage therapy, Pilates, personal training, and the what's called the merchant category codes are already in place, and they just have to be entered into a health club's front desk operating system. So once you get those codes from your insurance people, whatever, that this is something that Jason knows more than I do. Those codes are available. So when Joe comes into the gym and he shows them his card, his insurance card. Like I have an HSA card in my wallet, and you swipe that card, and every month they'll pull out $250 or whatever the price is for the program. So you can be in X number of programs for that month because you've already paid $250. And remember that most HSA programs through the employers, if you don't use it at the end of the year, it's gone. That $3,000 or $3,500 does not roll over to next year.
That's with the FSA. That's with the FSH.
Right, it's a flexible spending account.
Right.
But many companies that have HSA plans do not roll over. Many do, some do not.
Wow.
Okay, and also you've got HRA. You've got health reimbursement accounts, and some of those, and most of those don't roll over either. Okay. It just depends on the employer. And again, this is Jason's wheelhouse. So his phase 2 is that I believe by the end of this year, his LifeCore health plan will be available for people all over the United States to join as a member, which will pay you premiums. And if you are a health club member, you'll be paying much less than you would with Blue Cross and Blue Shield or Humana or Prudential or a Kaiser. Yeah. But a portion of that plan, like the HSA, will be allocated for your health club programs.
Definitely,
so it's a win-win for anybody.
Right. Pass his information on to me. I'll throw him in the episode notes in case people want to reach out to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So interesting. I would love it again. As you said, I'm sure the big pharma or medium pharma or whatever are probably going to say my suggestion. Joe, go pound sand. We're not going to do anything like that. But I look at it from a science perspective. I think if we can get all that data, it would be phenomenal. My fear is this. They put up these clinics in, Lifetime or Equinox or whatever, and people get their prescriptions, they get Ozempic, and they do their own thing, or maybe they get a personal trainer because that, I'm sure that's also what they want to do in the gym.
I think most of them are going to use personal trainers. I think these are going to be specialty programs for sure.
And that data does not get logged into a central database, and we don't really recoup anything from it to see what the effects are, and people stay on Ozempic forever.
Well, that's where my company comes in, because I've already been in brief communications with Lifetime, and Lifetime will probably stay with Miura because they are the longevity partner. I don't know if Miura is a research company like I am, but yet to be determined. But I actually have got a call into a couple other health club chain presidents to say, listen, let's do this. Let's work with Jason Paul on the insurance and HSA side. Let's get you guys some money to do this because they'll pay for this program. An HSA will absolutely, positively pay for an Ozempic related exercise program. No doubt in my mind, 100%. And so therefore, that program in the health club would actually get paid for through the HSA dollars. And to answer a part of your question, if Novo Nordisk or Eli Lilly or any of these other big companies will not give away free samples, they might actually, from a sample standpoint, they may give some free samples, but they may want to pay for the exercise programs. They may want to sponsor the exercise programs because they want their people to be healthy. Because if I gave you a drug that dehydrates you, the smart money in Eric's casino is that you're not going to last much longer because you're dehydrating your body. Right. And dehydration is the aging process, Joe. You know that. Yeah. I mean, the organ failure is basically dehydration. The body just doesn't. And again, that's the normal deterioration of the intestinal tract just with age. Yeah. And of course, most people who have dementia and Alzheimer's forget to eat and drink anyway. So there's all kinds of things that you're dealing with just with aging. But I have to tell you, and I'm going to jump on a soapbox here, because one of the things that I am tremendously optimistic on is the area of precision wellness, nano-V technology, compression sleeves, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, cryotherapy, cold plunge, all of these precision type things that are happening that are having a massive effect on people's chronic health conditions. I have a paper on my desktop that I send to people almost every week from a group in Scottsdale, Arizona, that looked at 7 people with Alzheimer's disease who went through a 3-month NanoV program, which is a box that you breathe exclusion zone water vapor, and it helps your mitochondria to work about 300% better than normal. And they also did a mitogenic diet. So for 3 months, they changed their food, and they did this exclusion zone water 3 days a week. And at the end of 3 months, she essentially cured their Alzheimer's disease. All of their metrics in terms of Alzheimer's and dementia, their assessments, their blood work, etc., it was all normal. And I actually met one of the participants who came in to this wellness center, and the doctor was there. And she came around the corner and she said, "Do you see that guy who just walked out?" And I said, "Yeah, he's got a really nice car," because he had a really good car. She goes, "You know, 3 months ago, he couldn't find the keys to get in his car.
Wow.
And now he's driving around Phoenix." And I'm like, okay, that's to drive around Phoenix without Alzheimer's disease is tough enough because it's such a big city. There's so much traffic out there.
Yeah.
I think there's something happening there. This is a trend that a lot of people, I mean, cold plunge is everywhere now. When I was at the International Health and Racket Sports Club 2 weeks ago, their conference and expo in LA, there were 6 or 7 companies that had cold plunge equipment for your club.
Right.
2 years ago, that there wasn't any.
Yeah.
They thought, "Are you crazy?" That's what polar bear people do on January 1st.
Right.
They don't, who's going to jump in cold water? What are you, crazy? Everybody's doing it now.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing these things that people are doing to enhance their health to a certain extent that just weren't around 5, 10, 15 years ago. And those people with Ozempic, they can benefit from all that. You get them into the club and they'll say, "Well, I want to do a sauna. You know, I want to get a massage. You know, your HSA dollars can pay for that." "Really? Well, why don't you schedule a massage for next Tuesday?" So they can move into this thing, and we want them to become a part of the health club family because historically these people are not the ones who go to health clubs.
I know.
They go to doctors.
Right.
And this is to come back, and I'm going to finish, to get back to finish your point. The health clubs have to step up to become providers. They have to use the body composition on a regular basis. They damn well better know how to use a stethoscope and a blood pressure cuff.
So,
And they should put the data into the computer after every session. There you go. That's my soapbox.
No, I would love it if they did that. But the blood pressure, you know, when I first started doing this stuff, we took blood pressure in gyms. They don't do it anymore. At least the gyms that I've been to, there is no blood pressure cuff. There was no stethoscope. There was nothing. And the inside scoop is, I had a conversation with a friend of mine a few years back. She used to manage a very well known chain of health clubs. And she said, because I brought this up, she says, "Yeah, we spoke to the lawyers, and the lawyers said the less you know, the better. The less you know about your members, the better you're off from a legal perspective." So the lawyers are like, "Don't take blood pressure, because if you knew somebody had hypertension, they had a stroke, you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit."
But they're having lawsuits anyway, Joe.
I hear you. I hear you.
You've heard the old adage, "Ignorance is no excuse of the law."
Right.
And you could say that with health clubs. Health clubs post-COVID, I think, are a little bit beyond the fact that, "Oh, we don't need to see that. Nothing here." No. Those days are gone. You should want to teach your people to do blood pressure.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. It was done, and at some point within the last 15 years, it stopped being done. I hope it comes back. I would love to see personal trainers as more than rep counters, which is something somebody said to me just yesterday. She's like, you know, she took a certification class with me many years ago. She's like, "I got out of it because I was tired of being a rep counter." And I'm like, wow. And I felt bad when I read that, but it is true. There are trainers out there who are just rep counters. We need to be more of a medical resource to some degree. I don't want to say the word medical. It's probably not the best word, but health resource.
A health promotion resource, as opposed to just renting space. You know, my whole thing with clubs is, you know, you're renting equipment. You go into this box and there's a bunch of equipment you don't have at your house.
Yeah.
And so you use it. Well, you know, during COVID, I was in my backyard. I had a rack of dumbbells outside that I didn't use very much. They were outside pretty much every day. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then
Yeah.
eventually I got back into the club, but and I still do some work at my place, but mostly I'm in the gym every day. But you
Good.
bring up great points. You know, can clubs do a better job of doing weight loss? Yeah, because there's no data that health clubs are any better than Jenny Craig or any of these other people.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't care if Marie Osmond lost 25 pounds. I mean, Oprah lost weight and then she gained it back. And then she lost it again, Joe, and then she gained it back. So
Right.
so this is something that the doctors want I'm not going to say this all doctors, but many doctors would like their patients to be on a drug forever because it's easy.
Yeah.
Ozempic's going to be easy. If you scale from 2 milligrams to zero point 0.5, that may be your quote maintenance dose forever.
Maybe. We have an unhealthy population, as you know,
Yes, we do.
and a population that mostly doesn't meet the exercise guidelines for strength and cardio.
Yep.
I could get on board with the Ozempic thing if it led to a healthier population, less medication use long term, longer health span, longer lifespan too, but definitely longer health span. Because this is what we're really talking about is the national security problem that no politician wants to talk about. With the exception of Kennedy, who has talked about it, but we have an
Yep.
unhealthy population that it is unsustainable to ensure. Again, everybody always talk about national health care. It ain't ever going to happen with
Yep.
an unhealthy population. But if we got a healthier population, a stronger, fitter, medication population, we're not taking multiple medications. Well, then maybe we could get to that point where we're insuring everybody, and I could get on board with that. But again,
Well, there will from Jason's standpoint with LifeCore, there will be certain metrics that you, the consumer, need to meet before you come on his health plan. You can't say, well, I did this 3-month program 2 years ago in a health club, but I want to pay less. Nope, that's not how it works.
Interesting.
There are certain metrics that you need to do. Jason's going to, because again, we got 35 million Americans who are health club members. And if we get 15% of them, 7 million people to jump on board in the next 2 or 3 years, we've got a company that's doing really well financially. Right. So our shareholders are happy and all that kind of stuff, but it's only 7 million people. We can make a bigger thing. And I really, when you go to these conferences, I went to the IDEA conference last summer, which was also in Los Angeles. And there's a lot of energy. These people really do want to help. It's not like they're a bunch of slugs.
Right.
I heard horror stories from people during COVID, these healthcare people who were putting people on protocols they had no business being on because, well, that's just what our hospital said to do. Fitness people at least want to get people healthier. They want to have an impact in their community, etc.
Right.
And so I think that given the challenge, hey, if we give you a software program, if you have the ability to understand blood labs, if you understand that the body composition that you learned in school, years ago is going to be one of the most important things that you can do now, right, then you're a provider. You're not just a rep counter.
Right.
And I'll tell you a personal story. I started my career in personal training in New York City. And our clients at the Sports Training Institute were Morgan Stanley Finance, E.F. Hutton, Rothschild Investments, New York Tennis and Racket, and a couple other of these big law firms or whatever. Maher Slate Flom, one of the biggest international law firms. You had to have up your game there, because the guy that you're training is worth $100 million, right, and he expects you not to be a slug.
Right.
But when I moved to California and I was able to take my experience as a personal trainer and start working with women who had gestational diabetes and people who were obese, and I had to understand their blood labs, and I had to understand the power of body composition. I actually was one of the first researchers in the country that did MRI research in pregnancy. So we put pregnant women in MRI scans in the late 80s to look at their fetal fat pads. So I elevated my status, and you know what? To this very day, I still say that my roots are in personal training, but my career has had so many other opportunities because I became a provider. I became a researcher. I became, I wear a lot of hats. But I think personal trainers, I think will be up to the challenge. I think they want to work with these people because doctors aren't doing it.
Yeah.
I look at, again, I'll always go back to COVID. The rest of my career, I'm going to say, so that COVID, how'd it work for you guys? Cured everybody, didn't you? Everyone's healthier now, aren't they? Not. Okay, so if this is truly the time for the health club industry, I want to help them step up. I have the tools. We talked about the blood labs. We talked about, I wrote a certification course on blood labs 5 years ago. I'm willing to give that to any health club for free, so they understand what they're working on in terms of their trainers. We have the software program with Weld Health called Healthy Stats. We've got Jason Paul waiting in the wings here for HSA dollars and a year from now a health plan. We have the foundation already built now, Joe, and I think Ozempic, I think that GLP is going to be the tipping point. If I can quote Malcolm Gladwell, our own tipping point. So we'll see.
I hope it is. I could definitely get on board with it if Ozempic became that gateway drug to leading people into the ultimate best drug, which is exercise. And I tell people that all the time. Personal trainers, they prescribe the most powerful drug in the world, exercise, lowers depression rate, improves muscle, cardiovascular fitness, improves your health span and lifespan, and you don't have to do a lot to do it. Right. And again, it is something that I believe wholeheartedly.
Jason Conviser, who's been a mentor for me. I mean, this guy was involved with cardiac rehab back in the 70s. And I remember listening to him give a talk at the International Health Club Conference. And he said, if exercise were a pill, it would be the most prescribed medicine in the history of the world. And he went on to rattle 30, 40. I mean, he just had a listing like, to Alzheimer's, cardiac, hypertension, depression, this, that. I mean, it's just things that I never even thought about. But I've worked with some obscure things too. So conditions like Guillain-Barré syndrome and Raynaud's syndrome. And exercise helps with those as well. And, I met with a gentleman in Chicago 3 weeks ago who has a company called the Exercise Connection that works with children with autism, which is a huge area. There are 2.5 million families who are dealing with autistic children. And many of these children are now entering into adulthood. So what do you do? How do you improve? And I'm doing a research study right now, a case study on a young man who had massive problems with autism, but his family gave him 4 stem cell injections down in Panama over a 5 or 6 year period. And at 20 years old now, this guy's back in society.
Wow.
And he was severely autistic. Helmet, diapers, the whole thing when he was 7, 8, 9 years old. Non-communicative, didn't go to school, lashed out. I mean, it was crazy. And now this guy is a 19, 20-year-old young man who's actually a productive member of society. Unbelievable. The answers are there. I believe it's my company's mission to sort of flush these things out. I've been really lucky. I've read lots and lots of research, as you have. And when I talk about the nutrition stuff, I know I can see your wheels turning on this. It's really important stuff. So
it is. And since we're talking about the GLP-1 agonist, lately on social media, I've been seeing influencers, some of them doctors, talking about natural GLP-1 agonists. The ones that I'm thinking about would be berberine, some people say, and yerba mate tea. This coming from, again, one of them I think is Andrew Huberman. He pops up a lot on TikTok for me. I've looked into this stuff. And again, I wanted to bring this up because, again, I got to take a shot, or I could just drink my yerba mate tea or take my berberine and it'll inhibit GLP-1. I've looked into this, and for the people watching us, I can't find any human research that berberine or yerba mate tea inhibit or augments GLP-1 in humans. There is some research on berberine helping weight loss, and I did a video of that on my YouTube channel. Maybe 2 extra pounds a month, but the research studies are small, and I would like to see larger studies. And I can't find diddly squat.
Okay, I'm looking at my ever-growing file on Ozempic right now. So the regulation of muscle mass by follistatin That's what Dr. Attia was talking about, was the follistatin, but it was in animals, but it is a massive hypertrophy thing. And the other thing that I think you and I spoke about last week was this New Zealand study in Nutrients magazine, or Nutrients Journal, on the New Zealand bitter hops extract, which reduces hunger during a 24-hour water fast.
Yeah, you
and
sent
so
me that
they're
data.
using this hops, which is that's how you brew beer.
Yeah.
And so they give them this hops, which was a tablet. It was an appetite suppressant tablet, a Maristat, which was given twice a day to these people. And they found that after 16, 20, 24 hours, they had also reduced hunger. That's what Ozempic does, except this hops does not dehydrate the body. It does not cause paralysis of the gastrointestinal tract. So there are options.
Right.
And again, that's where the whole exercise and nutrition combination is so important, is that, the exercise is going to be great, but if you can give them this follistatin, if you can give them creatine monohydrate, if you can give them something. Now, I'm also a big fan, and of course I don't have it right here on my desk. Well, actually, I think I do.
It would be interesting to do a study combining Ozempic and creatine. It would be a very interesting study to do. I don't know if it's been done yet, but my guess.
I don't think it has been, because Ozempic is like. But I've been utilizing this master amino acid pattern, and what I like about it is two things. Number one, it absorbs right out of the stomach.
Yeah.
And again, you put the cards together and say, well, wait a minute, if Ozempic is causing paralysis and you're not absorbing, but you've got something that can absorb out of the stomach and also has a 99.5% net nitrogen utilization. In other words, you're absorbing all of it. You may want to put people on Ozempic on this supplement because it's going to absorb as quickly as possible. So there are lots of different options, Joe. You and I could spend another hour talking about this stuff.
Right. I am going to look into the follistatin thing that you mentioned. To me, the word sounds like myostatin, which was myostatin is an inhibitor of muscle growth. So if you inhibit the inhibitor,
that's exactly what this is. It's inhibiting the inhibitor. That's what the studies were all about.
Okay.
That's what Peter Attia. I have to get you the interview that Peter Attia was doing with this other physiologist guy, and they were talking about that. Yeah, this is inhibiting the inhibitor.
Yeah, I've heard his podcast. He's a smart guy. I don't always agree with everything he says. The myostatin inhibitors were big about 20 years ago, and they didn't pan out. I remember when they were under lock and key at Vitamin Shop and GNC. They were that popular.
Really?
They were super popular. Everybody was talking about inhibiting myostatin because you could get bigger, stronger, faster without exercise. I'm not sure about this follistatin thing. I will look into it, maybe do a video on it. But I'm not impressed with the research on inhibiting myostatin that I have seen. But I'll look into it.
Well, like I say, this was also their animal studies, and I know that there are a lot of things that were done in animal studies that showed great promise. When they got into clinical trials with like real people, they weren't as good. But I do think that we've got, like I say, the whole thing with creatine, the whole thing with the bitter hops, the whole thing with these things, they're on the market now. And there's a combination of things. Maybe the Nano V may be helpful as well. I don't know. But anyway, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, one of my favorite studies was a 1986 study by James Fries from Stanford. I think it was in the Lancet, called Health Promotion and the Compression of Morbidity. So he said that, you have a timeline of maybe 75 years, and medicine has helped people live longer, but that window of time, they still are sick. They're just on more meds, and they're on, walkers and oxygen and all this other stuff. They're living longer, but they're not healthy. Right. And he says, what we want to do is we want to, live longer, but compress the morbidity.
Right.
That way, if you're only sick, like Jack LaLanne, I'm reading, Jack LaLanne is going to be in this new certification book. He was 96 when he passed away, and he came down with a bronchial infection, and 2 days later he was gone.
Right.
He was working out 2 days before he got sick.
Yes.
And then he just died. So the thing is like, so he had 96 years of good health and 2 days where he was in bed, and that was it. And you know what? If anyone looks at something like that, they're going to say that's a good way to go.
It is. And and as a side note to that, I'm saddened at how many people personal trainers in their 30s and sometimes even 40s who don't even know who Jack LaLanne was.
Longest running health TV show in the history of television. It was 1955 to 1983, I think. Almost 40 years.
It invented the lat pull down machine.
Yep.
It's the selectorized equipment technology.
First, I think he had the first health club in San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Yeah.
And just what he brought to the table in terms of wisdom.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of, he says, I can't die because it'll ruin my reputation. And this is these guys, you know, and you know, I mean, Schwarzenegger is pushing 80 right now, but he's not like Jack LaLanne. Nobody was like Jack LaLanne. He was just this amazing bundle of energy. And you know, in his, I met him a couple times, and I've also met his wife, Elaine, who's still living up in Morro Bay. She just turned 98 or 99 a couple weeks ago or last. So anyway, but you're right. You know, maybe I'm going to be the evangelist for this generation. I don't know, but I have a team of people who are helping move me forward, which is great. And I really appreciate you having me on your program here, because I consider you to be one of the godfathers of wellness nutrition. I mean, your book, your Encyclopedia of Nutrition is outstanding. Still is the Bible for the industry that people really should have on their shelves. So
appreciate it. I need to update it. It needs to be updated, but I appreciate it. We talked about an awful lot of stuff today, Eric. Is there anything that we missed?
Well, I want to go back to what we started with, that Lifetime is working with Miura. And Miura is a lifestyle company. Miura is not the only lifestyle company. Right. There's a lot of people who are starting to, I met a doctor from Miami 2 weeks ago on Facebook, and her regenerative and recovery center in Miami is amazing, because she said, I'm all done with traditional medicine. I'm all done with pills. I want people to do all of the regenerative stuff. They have everything that I spoke about in this show. They have. And she's a doctor, so she's doing the blood, she's doing the medical intervention stuff and the assessments. And I really think, too, this is where I'll end this conversation. I think if I'm a doctor and I'm just tired of medicine, I hated COVID, they wanted to pull my license, I want to be a concierge doc, I want to go work with Lifetime. I want to go work with Planet Fitness. I want to go work with Equinox or World Gym or Gold's Gym or Fitness 19. These are even the low end gyms. These Ozempic people, they're going to go to Fitness 19. Why? Because it's inexpensive. But the trainers have to be trained. So I want to get the entire industry involved with the education process. I want them to understand the technology that they can use. And I want them to understand how the data is going to be real important. Hey, you know, the Weld Health app you can do on your phone. You can click. I got Joe. Joe's number is 3422. His data comes up. I tap all the things he did. I did his blood pressures, 132/86 post-exercise. It's all in the phone. Took me 40 seconds. If I have 7 people in a small group exercise, it takes me 3 minutes to do their data. It's all on the cloud. All of a sudden, that data that you think is so very important is now going to be a part of all of this. And I think it's going to be exciting. I think trainers, you know, hey, I'm going to get a paper published. Absolutely. It's not just something doctors can do.
Right.
I got a paper going out today to ACSM's Health and Fitness Journal, and 2 of my students are on it. Boy, this is going to be great. It's their first paper. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Good for them.
Cool. The future is going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how all this plays out. But Eric Durak, I appreciate your time and your patience with all my questions and my soapboxes.
I got my own.
Yeah, we definitely do. I'll link to your website if people want to learn more about you, reach out to you, and that insurance guy you mentioned, throw him out to me.
Jason Paul, yes, I'll have him be a part
and
of that as well.
I'll put him in the show notes as well for him as well.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Eric, and as always, it's been extremely educational. I can't thank you enough.
All right, I appreciate your time.
Thanks.